put this picture up here because so many times people say to me, I don't have time to go grocery shopping, I don't have time to prepare meals. But you have time to sit in a food line for 5, sometimes 10 minutes. I guarantee that by the time you get through Starbucks, you could have very easily made your own bowl of oatmeal at home. So just remember that. But before we even get to the grocery store, how many of you have some sort of a meal plan or at least idea for the week along with a grocery list? Okay, a few. So what I do is, I might not have it down to the meal every day, but I keep a grocery list or just a piece of paper, notepad, whatever, on my refrigerator. So as soon as I become low in some sort of a staple, I write it down there. Or if there's something that I know I want to be making for the next week, I write it down. It'll save you a lot of time, and I know a lot of people will say, oh my gosh, I don't want to take the time to plan out my meals, to write a grocery list, but it will save you so much time. You'll be amazed that you can actually eat home-cooked meals the majority of the time. So let's go to the grocery store. Do you ever feel like this? I know I do. Like everything's just kind of a blur, or you stand in front of, I don't know, the millions of choices of cereal and think, I don't know what to get. Because there's about 40,000 products in the average grocery store. What grocery stores do you shop at?
Trading Co. Post Office.
Okay, Trading Company.
Super One.
Super One. Where was it? Safeway. Okay. Anywhere else? Walmart. Walmart. Okay. Okay. So you will learn, hopefully, to read between the lines. Come on in, grab the ball. So this example right here, we have ground turkey, which I don't know if you can see it up there, but it has the little Biggest Loser logo on it. It has a couple other things, all natural. So it sounds great, right? What does all natural mean? Who knows, right? It's an undefined term that gets thrown around a lot by the food industry. And then we have lean ground beef. We'll say it's 90% lean ground beef. So what would your choice be between the two? So you guys are a smart bunch. You've read between the lines. Because most people are so proud when they've switched over to ground turkey. But if it is not ground turkey breast, it's not going to be any leaner than lean ground beef. It's also higher in cholesterol, and it's not as rich in iron and B vitamins as lean ground beef. So if you've made that switch to ground turkey and you want beef, you can have beef again. A couple things to remember. So I'm speaking in terms of general nutrition. So if you have some sort of a specific need or health condition, we're not going to go into detail about what to look at on the food label for that. But if you have questions, just let me know. Also remember, everyone here is probably at a different point with their eating habits, their fitness. So think about what you can do, what sort of changes that you can try to implement from some of the things that we talk about tonight from where you are right now. So if you currently eat Pop-Tarts for breakfast, maybe you're not going to make the switch all the way to oat bran or plain oats for breakfast right away. So it's a progression. The same thing with, okay, so you're snacking on candy bars right now. Maybe think about replacing with a granola bar, working towards just eating more whole real foods, apple and nuts, for example. Okay. Can you see all right? Am I blocking your view? So most of you, I think everyone pretty much has a product in front of them. So we're not going to actually go through the entire food label unless that's what you would like to do. But I'm going to tell you the 3 things that you need to look at. The all pretty much you need to know for general looking at food label. At the top where it says serving size, that's the most important thing that you need to look at. The second most important thing is servings per container. So let's go with the Annie's Organic mac and cheese. How many servings per container is there?
5.
Okay. How many calories per serving in that container?
140
Okay.
calories, you said?
Yeah. So in that box, 140 times 5 is how much is in the entire box. Most people, though, their serving size is not the serving size that is on the container. How many of you have a cereal bowl that fits 3/4 of a cup? Probably not most of you. So pay attention to serving size, servings per container, calories per serving. I lied, there's a fourth thing to look at, and that is the number of ingredients. So if you go down to the bottom, below the food label panel, rule of thumb is if you can limit your intake of foods that have more than 5 ingredients, you're doing really good. So almost all packaged processed foods have a laundry list of ingredients that you can't pronounce, you have absolutely no idea what they are. So limiting those foods as much as possible. So less than 5 ingredients, you're doing pretty good. More than 5, you probably should not be buying it. The other thing to take note of is where sugar is on the list of ingredients. So you're not going to look at grams of sugar. A lot of people say, well, I look at sodium, I look at grams of sugar. Just ignore all that. Also ignore the daily values on the side because everybody's different. This is based on 2,000 calories per day. A lot of people don't need that much. It's also just an estimate. We don't really know. So just ignore all those percentages. They're just confusing. So sugar can come in the form of many different words and terms. There's about 25 different words for different forms of sugar. Evaporated cane juice, maltose, high fructose corn syrup, which you might now see as corn sugar. There's a variety of different things that can be masked as sugar. So if sugar is in the first 2 to 3 ingredients, again, you're going to try to get away from those sorts of products. Whole grain Fruit Loops, sugar is still within the first 2 ingredients. Any questions? That's it for the food labels, unless you have questions.
So you said though on the sugar not to pay attention to the grams of the sugar, or you look at that, or you're just basically doing the first ingredients, first 2 to 3 words?
Just the first check. Yeah.
That's it.
Unless you have a need to count carbohydrates, and then that's a little bit different. So now we're going to start on the actual tour. We start in the produce section. So if you can get half of your shopping cart to be produce, that would be great. So eating in season, we hear this a lot, but it is important for a couple different reasons. You're going to get better deals. The produce is usually going to taste better. It's also going to be higher in nutritive value. Trying to eat a variety of fruits and vegetables, and we hear eat the rainbow, but don't forget about the poor white vegetables. So onions, garlic, cauliflower, they have a lot of good nutrients as well. Just because they don't have the bright, vivid colors of some of the other fruits and vegetables does not mean that they're not equal in their health benefit. So don't forget about the white vegetables and fruits. I can't think of a white fruit right now off the top of my head. No? Okay. A couple of things. I generally just as far as fresh produce goes. And then just find creative ways to use it. That way you're not spending a ton of money on fresh produce. A few hidden gems that I use quite a bit are the bagged shredded cabbage. So you can put it in stir fries, on salads. You can just mix it in whatever you want really. And it's convenient, nutritious. You don't have to cut anything. You don't have to wash anything. It's ready to go. Sliced mushrooms and bagged broccoli. So even though chopping and slicing doesn't take very much time, I don't know about you, but the more I can eliminate, then the more likely I am to actually cook instead of relying on something like a sandwich for dinner. Broccoli slaw, the same use as the cabbage, and then the bagged broccoli. I also make sure to buy hearty vegetables. So what would some hearty vegetables be that last a long time in your refrigerator?
Apples.
Okay. Apples, carrots, jicama.
Celery.
Yeah, celery is pretty good.
Tomatoes.
Tomatoes I would put in the more fragile care category.
Potatoes.
What's that?
Potatoes.
Potatoes, yeah, onions. So then what I do is, and it depends on what day you go shopping, but we generally eat salad on the days that come right after going to the grocery store. So the way you plan out your meals for the week is salad at the beginning of the week, and then save some of those hearty vegetables or frozen vegetables for later in the week. Another trick is either Debbie Meyer green bags or the Hefty Fresh Extend bags, and they really do work. They extend the shelf life of your produce sometimes up to a week. So those are handy things to keep. Okay. Also, besides just produce, there's some other things that I keep on hand. So the little lemon and lime juice bottles, so those are good for making marinades or just adding for flavor during cooking. Also, minced garlic and minced ginger. So anytime I see a recipe or want to make something with garlic or with ginger, sure, you can use the fresh stuff, but I don't know about you, using fresh ginger is kind of a pain. So these will keep in your refrigerator for months at a time, and they're just a convenient, inexpensive way to add flavor to your cooking. Herbs, and then also tofu. So even if you don't use it in stir fries or regularly in cooking, it works well in smoothies as well, so that's another option for tofu. And tofu is a great source of protein, fairly inexpensive, and if you get it in the refrigerated section of the produce, it's going to have a shorter shelf life, but there's some tofu that you can find in the stores that's in little cartons, and that you can just keep on hand and it'll last for a long time. So a common question, and I know at least one person has got to be thinking right now, should I buy organic? So a couple different schools of thought on this. There are the supposed dirty dozen, so fruits and vegetables that you should definitely buy organic. But as far as nutritional value goes, organic isn't always necessarily more nutritious than non-organically raised fruits and vegetables. Also, one thing that I recommend is whenever you can, buy locally, even if it's not certified organic, because a lot of times our small local producers, they're very close to being organic, but maybe they just can't quite get there. But you're going to get better quality, higher nutritional value in anything that is grown locally. So if you want to buy organic, and if that fits in your budget, go for it. If it does not, an alternative is just make sure that you're washing and scrubbing, especially fruits and vegetables that have nooks and crannies like potatoes, sometimes cucumbers, things like that. And you can always use a veggie wash spray to remove the majority of any of the pesticides that are on there. Okay. Any questions on produce? Are we good? Okay. We're going to go to carbohydrates. So breads, cereals, grains, granola bars. This is the section that gets kind of confusing because of labeling. Let's see, I didn't bring any good products to show, but you all know the breads that say they're whole wheat or multi-grain, and they're actually made with white flour. So for bread, you're going to look for 100% whole wheat or some other form of whole grain. Some other items that often get the health halo over them, so they sound really healthy, but in actuality they're not. Rye bread, so it needs to be 100% rye flour, because a lot of times they'll just blend rye with white flour. Wraps. So there's a couple of wraps that I would recommend. Any of the Ezekiel or Food for Life brand is good for bread, any sort of bread product. It's usually in the frozen section because it's made with sprouted grains. And if you think about it, bread shouldn't be able to stay on a shelf for a couple weeks at a time. So the Food for Life Ezekiel brand doesn't use all the added sugar, so it has to be kept either in the refrigerated section or the freezer. But they also make some sprouted grain wraps. And then the flat out wraps are pretty good. Just be careful of the ones that are spinach wraps or sun-dried tomato, and they're gigantic. They're like this big around. They're usually 200 to 300 calories and don't really have any spinach in them. So it's really just like a white flour tortilla with some green stuff added to it. On bread, also, in addition to looking for 100% whole wheat as your first ingredient, you want to look for 4 to 5 grams of fiber per slice, or if it's lighter, lower calorie bread, it's going to be per 2 slices. So there's some brands that are really good, like Killer Dave's, but they're pretty calorie dense. So usually their slices of bread are about 120 calories. So they meet the fiber criteria and the whole grain criteria. But as far as calories go, if weight management is something that you have to work on, probably not the best choice. So pasta, rice, and grains. Who has the macaroni and cheese?
I do.
Okay, and then Annie's organic macaroni and cheese. So I had a client say to me, well, yeah, sometimes I feed my kids mac and cheese pretty frequently for dinner, but it's organic, so it makes me feel a little bit better. Well, it shouldn't, really, because if we look at Annie's organic, which it does, it looks better, it has a cute little healthy-looking bunny on it, we already know that when it's prepared, so it's 140 calories per serving in the box, but when you prepare it according to their instructions, it's 400 calories per serving. It's high in saturated fat, high in sodium, so yeah, it's made with organic wheat, but don't let organic deceive you, because it's not any better for you than Kraft mac and cheese. So when Kraft mac and cheese is prepared, it's 390 calories, so it's about the same. We've got about the same amount of sodium, same amount of fat. So, I mean, if eating organic makes you feel a little bit better, I guess that's okay. But on the other hand, you're not doing yourself any favors. So the same goes for whole wheat pasta versus white pasta. So sometimes people think that if it's whole wheat or if it's organic, then they can eat more of it. A great example is pasta. So no matter what the flour is that's used to make the noodles, you have the same, just about the same calorie content. The difference is with whole wheat, which should be your choice, you're getting a lot more fiber, a lot more protein. So not only the health benefits, but it's going to help you stay fuller longer rather than the white pasta. The same thing with rice, white rice versus brown rice. There's usually no difference in the calorie level, but you are getting that added benefit with the whole grains. A few things to look for in this section of the grocery store. So, quick cooking barley. Does anyone eat this? So, a lot higher in protein and fiber, and it tastes better, I think, than quinoa. But you can use this in place of rice or any sort of other whole grain, and it cooks in 10 minutes, and it has kind of a nutty, chewy texture to it. And then this is a good brand, Near East, and I'll show you at the end how you can make a whole meal, one pot meal with this. So lentil and rice mix. So these would be packaged items that would go on your grocery list. How we doing? Is everybody okay? Are we still awake?
We're
You're awake? Okay, good. So in the can and the jar. As far as fruits and vegetables go, yes, the first choice would be fresh. The second choice would be frozen, and as a last resort, you would go with canned. I don't encourage people to eat canned fruit, but there are some people that's all they'll eat for fruit. Just make sure that you're not getting the fruit with the syrup in it. You want the no syrup. And then as far as canned vegetables, except for canned tomatoes and maybe an occasional canned other vegetable, try to limit this in your diet because you're not getting a whole lot of nutrition out of those canned vegetables. Also concerns about BPA. So has anyone heard of that?
That's what I was gonna ask.
Okay, good. So I will try to answer your question. What was your question?
I was going to say, aren't you worried about the
BPA.
BPA in the can?
Yes.
It's there.
Right. So BPA is a chemical that's in the lining of almost all canned foods. There are some select food producers who are starting to use different techniques to can food. It's a chemical that's been outlawed in Europe and Canada, and it's also been shown if small children eat enough of it, it will cause damage as far as development and growth, but we still have it in our food system. So I would limit canned tomato products and canned green beans. They seem to have the highest amount of BPA that leaches from the can into the food to 2 servings per week. No more. Other things in cans, though, that you don't have to be quite so concerned about would be sardines, tuna, and salmon. So those are good things to keep on hand. They're good sources of protein, and salmon, tuna, sardines, all great sources of omega-3 fatty acids. And a little less expensive than the fresh stuff, yes?
Does it matter in oil or in water?
In water, yeah. So in oil, you're just gonna get a lot of extra calories unless you need extra calories, but it's also in soybean oil, and great depth, but you don't want to have extra soybean oil, okay? Because that's a kind of a whole nother topic. Canned beans are great to have on hand. I would recommend that you make beans, if you can, from dry, just to avoid the exposure to BPA. Salsa, roasted red peppers. So you can, I'll show you a couple meals at the end, just having these things on hand. They're not going to go bad, so just keep your pantry stocked with some of these things. They can add a lot of flavor with not many calories, and they just make it easier to make a meal. All right, we're back to carbs galore. As far as cereal goes, I would try to limit your cereal intake as much as possible, except for whole oats and oat bran. A couple of okay brands to eat of cereal, and this is not, you know, the most extensive list, but just a few things you could find in every grocery store. So, let's see, Special K Protein Plus, Kashi Go Lean, Whole Wheat Chex, All Brand, Total, just the straight plain Total, not the stuff with, I don't know, they put little granola clusters or whatever. Uncle Sam's. So when you're looking at a cereal, even if it says, you know, made with whole grains, they make cereal sound really good and healthy for you, but it's still all processed whole grains, and a lot of times they don't have very much protein or fiber. So those are two things that you're going to look at when you're looking at cereals. And then a lot of people, they eat cereal for breakfast thinking that it's somewhat healthy, but it's not going to give you much lasting energy. So you need some other source of protein and some good fiber. So protein from eggs or nuts, something like that, in addition to the cereal or Greek yogurt. Let's look at peanut butter real quick. Who here eats peanut butter? All right.
We all
So peanut butter is a staple in my house. This is my husband's peanut butter, and this is my peanut butter. So he refuses to eat this stuff. So this is just like regular Skippy or Jiffy. It's just the Walmart brand. I would encourage you to try to eat the natural peanut butter, but again, read the label. So you just want peanuts and salt. That would be optimal, okay? This type of peanut butter, it has added sugar and also usually partially hydrogenated oils or trans fats. So we're trying to get away from trans fats as much as possible and added sugar. So make the swap. If you use jelly or honey, you probably won't even notice much of a difference. A lot of people, they look at this, the natural type of peanut butter that has the oil floating on the top, and they think, oh my gosh, it has so much fat in it. Well, yeah, it does, because peanuts do have a lot of fat, but the other type of peanut butter has that much fat too, and in addition to the fat, it's the wrong type of fat that you don't want. Again, be aware of granola bars especially. So in Nature Valley, for instance, they make themselves sound like they are all natural, good stuff. But it's just a glorified candy bar, really. It's oats coated in sugar. So it's not going to give you a lot of nutrition. It's also probably not going to keep you very full for very long. So trying to get away from granola bars as much as possible. The Lara bars are one brand that I like.
What are they?
Lara.
Lara?
L-A-R-A. The Kashi granola bars are kind of in between. So they're better than Nature Valley, but they still do have some added sugars, but they have more protein and fiber and a little less sugar than most of the other granola bars. And then the last item on here is the instant oatmeal. So you might as well eat a Pop-Tart.
Is that instant oatmeal just with the added flavor, or is it plain?
No, so the flavored ones, yeah. If you get the plain instant oatmeal, that's perfectly fine. All right, veggie chips, Terra chips. Calorie-wise, they're the same as potato chips. And you're not getting any extra nutrition because you're eating a sweet potato chip compared to a regular Lay's potato chip. There is just empty calories again. As occasional treats or snacks, that's fine, right? But don't think that just because it's a veggie chip that can count as your vegetables for the day. Also, 100 calorie snack packs. I hate these things. So if it's your treat for the day, that's perfectly fine. If you need, some little sweet something. But if that is your snack in between meals, all you're getting is empty carbohydrates, unless it's a 100 calorie snack pack of almonds or nuts or something like that. But all the other ones that are overpriced, just to pay for portioning, it's just empty calories. Trail mix, usually pretty calorie dense, so just be aware of portion sizes. The same with granola. Usually half a cup of granola can have around 200 to 250 calories. Trail mix, sometimes the serving size is as small as 2 tablespoons, and it's usually around 160 calories. So really small portions with a lot of calories. So trying to limit those foods as much as possible unless you are on a 100-mile backpacking trip. So here are some ideas for healthier snacks in addition to whole foods like fruits and vegetables. Okmok and Wassa crackers, Snyder's Oat Bran, pretzel sticks, popcorn, as long as it's not the movie smothered in butter popcorn, and then jerky. Okay. Moving right along to meat. So quite a few meat eaters in here. As far as soy products versus meat, whole soy is great. So tofu, tempeh, edamame, miso, things like that is good. I know that's usually a popular question. Well, what about soy? Imitation meat products like most soy burgers, soy bacon, tofu, things like that, you're much better off just eating regular meat or chicken or whatever it is, or fish. So I'm not going to read these off, but these are the cuts to look for. These are the healthiest cuts in the grocery store. Pretty much if it has fat on it, if it has a visible fat, it's a fatty piece of meat. If you can't see fat on it, then it's probably pretty lean. So these are beef cuts. Pork, chicken, and seafood. These are pretty self-explanatory. The seafood listed has some of the higher amounts of omega-3s and lower amounts of mercury. And then things to look for and keep on hand: frozen shrimp, Gorton's salmon, and they also have tilapia. They're pretty good. And then, of course, eggs. So everybody always overlooks eggs. So you can eat them for dinner too. They're a good, quick, cheap source of protein. Moving along to dairy. So as far as milk goes, of course, I recommend 1% milk. It's not skim milk, but also not whole milk. So 1% would be the best choice. Or if you do soy or almond or rice, just make sure that you're getting the stuff that's enriched with calcium and vitamin D. Yes? Why not skim the milk? That's a good question. So in some of the processing of milk, and this is just starting, the information is just starting to come out. Some of the processing to strip the fat, or all the fat out of the milk, it's not good for you. I'm just gonna simplify it. Also, the little bit of fat that you get in 1% milk, which adds about 20 calories per 8 ounces, is going to help you feel fuller longer. So always trying to do everything skim and non-fat isn't always necessarily better for you. Did that clear up? Okay. If you like skim milk, go for it. But I always recommend 1%. As far as things like half and half and coffee creamers, don't go get the fat-free half and half. You see like 20 calories, and again, they're just putting a bunch of fillers in there and ingredients that you probably can't pronounce and that I don't even know what they are. So a little bit of the real thing is always going to be better than something that's fake and has a bunch of ingredients that we don't know what they are. And then as far as yogurt goes, Greek yogurt, yes, has more protein. Watch out for things like fruit on the bottom yogurt, because it's usually around 200 calories for the little container. And I would recommend for yogurt either non-fat or 1%. And is organic better? Yeah.
Doesn't the non-fat 1% yogurt have a lot of aspartame in it though?
If you're getting the flavored kinds. So your optimal choice for yogurt would be to get plain yogurt and then add fruit, nuts, cinnamon to it. So yeah. And it depends on where you stand on the artificial sweetener debate. I say try to do without artificial sweeteners as much as possible. And then as far as organic dairy goes, yes, it is somewhat better for you. A lot of milk is starting to be produced without some of the added hormones and antibiotics, so I would look for that. Okay. Moving on to some of the frozen stuff. So vegetables, frozen vegetables are just as nutritious, sometimes even more nutritious than fresh produce because they're picked when they're ripe. They ripen on the vine or on the tree, as opposed to sometimes when you buy stuff, it's been picked off of the vine when it's not ripened, and then it ripens in a warehouse. So it doesn't have all the nutrient value sometimes that frozen vegetables do. They're also inexpensive, they're convenient because they're usually always washed and sliced for you. The same thing with frozen fruit, especially as we start to go into the winter. Frozen berries are a great thing to keep on hand to add to yogurt, oatmeal, smoothies, things like that. Edamame or soybeans, the ones in the pod or shell, if you eat sushi, this is what you get. They are a nice snack, so a little bit of fiber, a little bit of protein. And then as far as frozen meals go, because this is usually a pretty common question, well, what about lean cuisines? As far as portion control, they're great, but as far as nutritional value, they are lacking. They're usually high in sodium, so if you can limit your frozen meals from on things like lean cuisine or, I don't know, healthy choice, smart ones, Weight Watchers, whatever. Try to get away from that. Also, we know that calories aren't equal in the sense that if we eat calories from a packaged processed food versus the same number of calories from a whole food, so let's take a lean cuisine meal at 320 calories versus a meal of brown rice, vegetables, which could be frozen, and chicken, we know that it's going to take our body more energy to break down that whole unprocessed meal. So even though they're equal in calories, as far as long-term health benefits and long-term weight management, the whole foods are going to be better. Did I just confuse everyone? See some blanks there. Okay. Some other things in the frozen food section. Amy's is a pretty good brand, extremely expensive, but if you're willing to pay for convenience, then go for it. Vitatop muffins and cookies, another pretty good option, but they're extremely overpriced. You can make the same thing freely yourself. All right, where is the olive oil? So one thing with oil, or with olive oil, the two oils that you want to keep on hand or cook with are olive oil and canola oil. You can also use grapeseed and rapeseed oil. For cooking, for high heat cooking, canola oil. For dressings, marinades, sauteing, low heat cooking, use olive oil. So they have different burn points. With olive oil, just be aware that the extra light does not refer to calories. It refers to the flavor. So sometimes people mistakenly think, oh, well, I got the extra light olive oil, so it has less fat and less calories. But it's just referring to the flavor.
Aren't most olive oils all the same anyway? On calories?
Yeah. They're all the same.
Yeah.
Some things that I keep on hand are different types of vinegars. So those are good for marinades and cooking. Herbs and spices, just a quick note on them. When you're cooking with herbs and spices and you have them in a bottle, try not to shake it over whatever you're cooking, especially if it's steaming up a lot, because then the steam gets into the container and your herbs and spices are going to lose some of their quality through that. Condiments and dressings, as far as the aisle in the grocery store, most of them are pretty high calorie, high sodium, they have a bunch of junk in them. There are a few, so Annie's Organics for salad dressings are good. Soy Bay for teriyaki, stir fry, that sort of thing. Salsa is usually pretty good. Some of the Asian brands are actually better as far as they usually have less ingredients. So we couldn't leave the grocery store without going through the alcohol aisle and the drink aisle. So, because I know that Tim, that wouldn't be acceptable. So we'll start with non-alcoholic drinks. Vitamin waters, juice, soda, you can do without them. The vitamin waters aren't going to give you any edge. And unless you are a true endurance athlete or working out hard for more than an hour, you really don't need a sports drink. If you have kids and they're playing a 40-minute soccer game, they do not need a sports drink. As far as other, like the soapy drinks and things like that, a lot of times they have next to no fruit juice, so it's pretty much just like sugar water. So if you can just do away with all of that stuff, you're going to save yourself money and calories. I used to drink a lot of diet soda until I figured out that artificial sweeteners are not the best thing for you. And I noticed that every time I drank a diet soda, I was usually hungry within an hour, even if I had just eaten. So I cut out artificial sweeteners, didn't change anything else, and I think I lost 3 or 4 pounds. So just something to be aware of if you do drink and eat a lot of diet products or things with artificial sweeteners. Sometimes you're not doing yourself any favors with that. Alcohol. So with alcohol, moderation is key. Right? So usually the recommendations are that men are allowed to drink a little bit more than women, but I don't agree with that. So it should be the same moderation for everyone, and it should be really based on your body size and not, I mean, yes, there are differences with men and women in how we metabolize alcohol, but moderation is 1 12-ounce beer or 4 ounces of wine, 1 ounce of hard alcohol. I would stick with beer and wine if you are going to drink, and stay away from hard alcohol as much as possible. As far as the type of beer, it's all about alcohol content as far as what's the better choice, and sometimes darker beers don't always have higher alcohol content. So Guinness, for example, has about 120 calories, where a lot of people think that it's really high in calories because it's dark. Any questions on alcohol? Just moderation is key. Okay. So a few things that I keep in my kitchen and have on hand are these green bags, parchment paper to cook with. If anyone's done tinfoil cooking during camping, this is the same concept. You just do it in your oven with parchment paper. And it's really easy, like 1 packet, and you have a whole meal. So I keep that on hand. And then a misto sprayer, so instead of using the Pam cooking sprays or any other cooking sprays, get a misto sprayer and then just fill it with your own oil. And then glass storage containers, so this kind of comes back to the BPA. Storing your food as much as possible in glass or something like Corningware is best for you, and especially if you microwave. So don't microwave in plastic, don't microwave in Tupperware, and don't microwave with saran wrap over your food. Okay. So a few examples of how to create quick, healthy meals with some of the products that we talked about. So the rice and lentils. So lentil has good protein and fiber along with the rice. You're going to throw in, just to the same pot, a frozen bag of broccoli. And then you can add either fire roasted tomatoes or roasted peppers for a little extra color and flavor. So that meal takes about 30 minutes. It's 1 pot, no chopping required. The second one, just as another example, frozen shrimp, some sort of broccoli slaw or shredded cabbage, pre-cut veggies. Quick cook, either barley or rice, and then the teriyaki sauce I mentioned. So again, it takes about 15 minutes. So everybody can handle that, right? 15 minutes? It's not too overwhelming. Okay, what questions do you have? I know we covered a lot of information. So if you were to go to a grocery store, would you feel confident in making a few better choices? Did I confuse anyone entirely? You're probably not going to raise your hand at this point, I'm guessing. So that's the reason why. You can go to my Facebook page. I will have a survey linked to my Facebook page If you take the survey, make sure to include your email and your name, but also be honest with the survey. I'm not going to hold any criticism against you. And then one person who completes the survey will be selected either your choice of a 30-minute consultation with me, or we can actually go to a grocery store and we'll go around the store together. Okay? So it's Total Balance Wellness. Just search for it on Facebook and you should find it.